This is Sunday afternoon, January 19th, 1992, and the producer here is Bill Barker Jr., and the star is Mary Barker, Mary Giambrone Barker. We're going to talk a little bit about Mary's life. And she's going to start by talking about her parents and grandparents, right, Mom?
That's it.
Okay. You're on the air.
I guess we might as well start with my grandparents on my father's side.
Okay.
This is the occasion of Uncle Jimmy's wedding, and that's my grandmother, grandfather, that's Uncle Joe, and that's my father. And they came over at the turn of the century, and my grandfather was a lamplighter in Sicily.
That guy in that picture there?
Mm-hmm. The guy right sitting down with his wife, my grandmother, who was a twin.
Now, are those your maternal or paternal grandparents?
Paternal grandparents.
Okay. What about your maternal grandparents? Did you ever know them?
Well, I don't have a picture of them here. Yes, I did. My mother, now they came from Sicily,
right,
the turn of the century, and when he came to the United States, my grandfather, he also was a lamplighter in the United States. So they did well, because he had a job when he came over. And my maternal grandparents, I just knew my grandmother. My mother and two daughters came over from Sicily at the turn of the century. That was Aunt Marion and my mother Josephine.
Now, what were their parents' names? Mother, father, and mother's
My
name?
great-grandparents?
No, your grandparents. Their last names.
Oh, their last name. My maternal grandmother was Paola Micheli.
Okay.
She's in St. Augustine Cemetery in Bridgeport, King of Prussia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And my mother's Mary, or Josephine, and she's buried over in Norristown. And then there's her sister.
And what was your grandfather's name?
I don't know what my mother's father's name was. I never knew him because when they came to the United States, he had already died.
Oh, okay.
So I never knew him. I really didn't know his name.
All right.
So now, let me see.
Let's go back to your paternal grandparents.
Oh, here's a picture of my mother when she was 16 years old. Right here.
Well, I don't think you gave us your grandparents' names. Your grandmother's maiden name on your mother's side. On your father's side, rather.
Oh, I don't know what her name is. Can you believe it? I know his name was Vito.
Uh-huh.
Vito. And of course, you'll find several Vito Giambrones around. And it seems that my mother had 4 boys. She named each one of them Vito, and each one of them died when they used to have the influenza outbreak. So finally she said, that's it, I'm not naming any more boys after your father. So she named him Charles, after my father. And of course that's Uncle Charlie, who's a Holy Ghost father.
Yes.
And here's a picture of Uncle Charlie when he was a Marine. He was in the Marine Corps in the Second World War, and he was stationed in the
South Pacific?
South Pacific.
Guadalcanal, wasn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this is my mother.
Yes.
When she was 16 years old. Isn't she beautiful? And she got married. She was married right about that time. And these are 2 friends of hers. And this is 1992. And one of these women.
1892.
No, today is 1992.
Oh,
and one of these women is still living. I don't know which one it is. She happened to give the picture to Uncle Charlie.
They're friends of hers.
They're friends of hers, yes. Mm-hmm. But one of them's still living, so she must be 100 years old.
Where was that picture taken, in Sicily or in the
No, in Norristown somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Because they were in Norristown for a short time, and then they moved to Bridgeport when they were first married, my mother and father. And my father was a shoemaker at first, and then he opened the only clothing store in Bridgeport, Pennsylvania.
And when did they get married?
The turn of the century. We don't know the exact date. And,
okay. They were very young, weren't they?
Oh, yes. My father was 7 years older than my mother, and she was about 16, 17 when she got married.
Okay.
And they had 8 living children. But the thing about the clothing store in Bridgeport at 62 East 4th Street was the only clothing store for a long time where all of the people from Bridgeport would come and shop for everything. Shoes, socks, underwear, jackets, hats. And of course, a lot of people worked in Lee's Mill, in Bridgeport. They would just come over and outfit the whole family. And of course, my father would write in the book, you know, you owe so much, and they would always pay. People were very nice. They would pay a little bit at a time. But then in 1929, when the Depression hit, and nobody had any money, they were all out of work, they couldn't pay my father, so he also had to, he went bankrupt.
Well, let's, before we get into that, you were born what year?
May the 2nd, 1921.
And now you were not the oldest of your siblings.
No, we have, Elizabeth was the oldest, Pauline, who recently passed away, and then Rose, who also has passed away, and then me, and then Aunt Jeanette, and Aunt Feenie, and Uncle Joe.
He was the youngest, Uncle Joe?
He was the youngest, and he died at the age of 52 of a heart attack.
Yeah. Okay, well, why don't you tell us about your early childhood on 4th Street in Bridgeport? What are your earliest memories of that home?
Well, being with my grandmother. I loved my mother's mother so much. And we lived over my father had it built, this building with a store in the front, an apartment in the back, and above, and then a kitchen and a shed in the back of that, and a living room.
And that was 62 North?
It was 62 East 4th Street.
What was that the store or the house?
That was the store, and then the house was 60 East 4th Street. But we lived in there until I was 16 years old, in that big store. And then when I was 16, we moved into the house next door, which my father also owned. The people moved out, and because he had renters in there. And it was a 3-story home, and we loved it. Plenty of room, plenty of bedrooms.
Which house was that? That was 62?
60 East 4th Street, the house right next door. In fact, at one time they were connected. And my father had a door open between the two houses.
Between 60 and
62.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we could run into the store and come back into the house. Anyway, and we went to St. Augustine School. My mother said she bought that property because we were so close to everything. All the children went to St. Augustine School, grade school, and then we went to Bridgeport High School.
Okay, now when we left off, you were talking about the fact that you and your siblings had gone to St. Augustine School.
Right, which was like a half a block away. The Acme was half a block away, and then my parents had a clothing store, and next to them was a tailor, and next to them was a barber, and then in the corner was a pool hall, as we used to call it. So everything was right there. Excuse me. You turned it off, didn't you? Well, anyway. So we had a very, very happy childhood. All the kids running around, playing in the streets.
Well, where did, at that time, most of the people in Bridgeport worked across the street at the Lee's Mill?
Lee's Mill and Diamond State Factory, I think it was called. They were too big. Lee's Mill just made yarns for rugs. They're still in existence today. They make rugs, but they no longer are at that location. They moved down south somewhere, and at that time, it devastated the entire area because it was a livelihood of probably about 70% of the people.
Now, when you were 7 or 8 years old, the Depression hit in 1929, is that right?
That's right.
And how did that impact on you personally?
And nothing really. I just remember that before the Depression, I would go into the store and I'd try on a pair of shoes, and if I liked them, I just wore them. I would try on sizes of shoes or a dress or something, and if I liked it, I would just wear it. It would be mine. But after the Depression, of course, we had to shut down the store. But my father did well as a shoemaker.
What was the name of the? By the way, who was that crying in the background there?
Bring him here, sweetheart.
Bring him into the picture.
This is Garrett. This is our grandson.
He wants to get
Garrett.
into the picture.
Yes.
I'll see you another time.
My sweetheart.
And who's?
Isn't he beautiful? This is our oldest son, Bill's photographers son, firstborn, Garrett.
Garrett William.
Garrett William, and he's just a joy complete. And he's trying to get the rose off of my dress, which that rose represents a birthright.
Does he seem to be interested in what's going on?
Oh, he's just too precious. What's your daddy doing over there? Where's Dad? He still wants to grab a hold of that rose on my dress. Really, as Jackie Gleason said, my parents, we were never poor. My parents were poor. But we never noticed. There was always plenty to eat, even if it was just, when we sat around the table, it just might be a big bowl of polenta, which is very nourishing with something topping that. There was always plenty of homemade bread around, and pizza, and pastas, so that we never went hungry. Like some.
Or cold?
Or cold, no. Although our bedrooms didn't have any heat in them, but we didn't think anything of that. Our bedrooms, we would open the windows in the wintertime, and if it was snowing, the snow would come in, and you'd see about a 3-inch thing of snow, and that's all right. We went up to bed, and the bed finally got warm. You want my glasses? Oh, we've got to show you this. That's it. That's his aim in life, to grab my glasses on. What do you want, the glasses or the rose?
Mom, by the way, I'm going to ask you this question. What was the name of your father's store before the Depression?
It was just Giambrone's.
Dry goods?
Dry goods, that's right.
Okay. And then later it became Giambrone's Shoe Repair?
Shoe Repair. And that's where he stayed for the rest of his life. He died when he was about 84. And he still was a shoemaker. And, he wants these glasses in the worst way. Honey, they're my good glasses. I'm afraid you're going to break them.
When we left off, you were talking about how the Depression had an impact on you personally, and you said it wasn't too much of an impact.
No, everybody was poor. And we did have a home, and we had food. And as long as children have that, I suppose they're happy. And then went to Bridgeport High School and decided to go in training.
Listen, why don't you turn that light off behind you there for a second?
Really?
That kind of thing, yeah. Okay. Bridgeport High, that was what year?
Bridgeport High School, graduated in 1939. And I had a great time in high school. I loved being in plays. I loved singing. I was a soloist for the various functions that they had in high school. And was as a soloist for the Christmas fairs that they had, and loved it so much. And but went in training went into nursing because there was no possibility of taking a singing career, which is what I would have loved. But anyway, I was very happy as a nurse, very, very happy.
When did you graduate Bridgeport High?
1939. And then I graduated from nursing from Montgomery Hospital in Morristown in 1942.
Now, before we get to that point, let's talk about high school. Did you have any special boyfriends in high school?
And not really. No. I liked a lot of different guys, but I didn't date in high school. Because I was so involved with plays and dances. I used to go to the dances, so that was enough of a diversion. I used to love to dance. I still like to dance.
You talked about one play where you appeared solo and sang Oh Holy Night. What was that?
Oh, yes, that was Christmas, probably in 1938, when from the entire high school, one soloist was picked as the surprise soloist. And nobody knows who it is, not even my mother, until they come out on stage. And that was a great honor. I just loved it.
And how big was the audience?
The entire auditorium, probably, because people used to go to school functions in those days because there wasn't TV. And school functions were you looked forward to going because it was raw talent there. And the auditorium probably held about 700 or 800 people, and it would be full. The parents and the relatives, the town, people in the town.
That was when you were a senior, or were you?
I was a senior when that happened, but I sang at our baccalaureate. Also sang at our graduation. as soloist.
Now, 1938 was your graduation year, you said?
39.
39. Now, of course, we're getting to the point where we're going to be dead. What year did that happen?
Well, that happened the third year that I was in the nursing school, third summer, the year before I graduated.
Well, then, why don't you tell us about Pearl Harbor Day, since that must have happened first, I guess. Were you?
Yes, before I met Dad, December the 8th. What? December the
7th.
December the 7th, what, 1941? Is that when Pearl
1941.
Harbor Day
Yeah.
was, or was it 42?
41.
Okay, 41. And that was, I always remember that. I was working in the nursery over at Montgomery Hospital as a student nurse. And we just heard about it. You know, we were all on duty about 5 o'clock, and we heard that Pearl Harbor was bombed, and it all seemed so strange. And that we were going to war. It's something we didn't even never thought about.
Well, in those days, did you ever, before that day, had you ever heard of Pearl Harbor?
And not really. It was on the West Coast. I had never been to the West Coast at that time. And it wasn't especially a significant place. We heard of Hawaii, all along the West Coast and Hawaii, but as far as Pearl Harbor, no, it wasn't a familiar name.
And you were a student nurse at that time?
I was a student nurse in the nursery, and we all got quite upset at the time.
Who was with you at that time?
Well, I was on duty. I was on duty. Oh, I forget the names of the nurses now.
Well, who were your best friends from nursing school?
From nursing school, of course, Emma Ciccante, who was, well, the first year was Rosemary Annie. She was my roommate for the first year, and a great person. She died about a year ago. And then Emma Ciccante, called her Chick. She was my roommate the next 2 years, and then she was in my wedding. She was my maid of honor, and I was in her wedding. And she's Eileen's godmother, and I was Tina's, the firstborn of the Chicken Mashie, their daughter. And
you were her godmother?
I was her godmother.
And any other friends from nursing school?
Oh yes, Arlene Walt, who became Arlene Snyder.
Okay.
And they still are friends today after 50 years. And Hazel Mayall, who is Hazel Schaaf. Hazel and Fred, we still go out together. And Claire Cherry and her husband Charlie, who just moved from Atlanta after 40 years in Atlanta, just moved back to Norristown. So the 4 couples, we go out together every few months, go out to dinner and whatever. Still to this day.
Well, now, you got to tell us how you met Dad.
Okay, I started to tell you the last summer, my senior year, I guess it was called, in nursing. Someone was going to vacation down, take a ride. They had a new car. They were going to take a ride to Camp Holabird. She had a boyfriend there.
This was the summer of 1942?
41.
Oh, 41. This is before Pearl Harbor, then.
Well...
Okay, Mom, when we left off last time, you were talking about your first meeting with Dad down at Fort Holabird?
Camp Holabird.
Camp Holabird.
Maryland.
In the summer of 1941, I think you said. Is that right summer?
That's the right summer.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell us how it came about? You were going down with a friend?
Yes, Matilda Picaro.
Okay.
A neighbor. And she was going down to see her boyfriend, her steady boyfriend. And I was on vacation. And she said, Mary, why don't you come down with me? And I said, oh, that'd be great. She said, we're going to stay overnight. Her brother, her sister, and her sister's husband were going to drive. And I said, that would be great, but just make sure that you don't have a date for me, because I'm not interested in dating some strange soldier.
Okay.
So she said, oh, no, I won't have a date for you. So we get down there, and sure enough, she had a date for me. And it seems that her boyfriend had talked Bill, your father Bill, talked him into going on a blind date, and he wasn't so happy about that either, because he was reading a good book. He had a hard time getting him away from it. Let's see that the Lord planned all that. And we met, and there's a picture of us up there.
Okay.
First day we met.
Uh-huh.
One on the very top.
I see it.
And If you notice, I'm holding my arm so that it hides my waistline because I thought he was so fresh that he put his arm around me
Oh my gosh.
to have a picture taken.
That was taken at Camp Halliburton?
Camp Halliburton.
He was fresh to have done that, huh?
I know. The first date. I mean, the first day that I met him.
Right.
So that was it. And I thought it was nice. And months later, he wrote and asked if he could have a date, for a date. And I said, okay, I'll take a chance. And so I moved heaven and earth as a student nurse to get the weekend off.
Mm-hmm.
And several of the nurses, many of the nurses in the nursing home, they couldn't wait till they met my boyfriend that was coming up from Halliburton, you know, his uniform and all that stuff. So sure enough, he stood me up.
He did?
Yes.
He just never showed?
He never showed. And imagine how I felt. And I said, well, it serves me right. We're dating some stranger. Even thinking about going out with a stranger. You know, when you come from a small town, you know everybody. And so that was that.
Uh-huh.
And I was going to say, I probably lived happily ever after.
There must be more to it than that, though.
And so then months later, I got a letter from him, apologizing, saying that he really had no excuse except that there was a good party going on across the street from where he was living, and he decided to go to the party instead. So he wanted another date, and I said okay. And the rest is history. The rest of our lives is one big date.
Okay. For the next 45 years, right?
45 years. Mm-hmm.
What, that first real date you had, where was it and what did you do?
I don't even remember.
Hmm.
Oh, yes, I do. I was stationed at Children's Hospital. We affiliated there. As a nurse, student nurse, we affiliated at Children's Hospital. And that's not far from where he lived, because he was from South Philly. And somehow I know, oh, this is so romantic. He took me to a funeral. He said, my uncle's being laid out. Would you go with me?
His uncle?
His uncle. And
Which uncle was that?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. Aunt Mame's husband, who was an uncle once removed.
Okay.
And it was right there in Philly, and he come to the nurse's home at Children's Hospital in 19th and Bainbridge, Philadelphia. And that's where I met his family. I met his mother, and I met his beautiful aunt that I thought was his girlfriend. She kept on saying, Billy's my boyfriend, and she's this beautiful blonde, you know, and she's kidding with him. And then I realized it was Aunt, I can't think of her name. Aunt Leona.
Oh, Aunt Leona.
Aunt Leona, so beautiful, who died about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what else do you want to know?
Well, then I guess at that point,
yeah,
he left
then
for the
we
war.
started. Yes, then we got serious, and started to date seriously, and then on April the 4th, 1942, I think, I'll have to get my engagement ring out. We were engaged. Isn't he precious?
He's stealing your scene here, Mom.
Let's take this away from your face so we can see. Look at Daddy. Come.
Hey, Garrett. Hey, pal.
There he is.
He's a good boy. He's behaving himself.
He is. Oh, he's fine.
Okay, so you were getting serious.
We became engaged.
And then?
And then he went off overseas.
Yeah.
To the European Theater of Operations. And he was over in England and France and Germany. He was away for almost 3.5 years.
And what did you do during the war?
During the war, I worked as a school nurse. I was offered the job, school nurse, Bridgeport. So I did that for those 3 years. And on weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I worked at the hospital because there was a shortage of nurses. So I worked the 3 to 11 shift. And I went to 3 classes at the University of Pennsylvania to try to get my degree for school nursing, because they gave me the job saying, you know, if you like the job, but you'd have to continue your education. I said, fine. And I also was, during those 3 years, one night a week, was a Girl Scout leader. So that left me one evening a week, not one day a week, one evening a week free to do what I wanted for 3 years, but I loved every minute of it. And at the end of that time, your dad came home, and we were married March 2nd, 1946.
Now, did you work for the USO at all during those years?
Well, I don't know whether you call working for it, but sometimes I'd ask a group of us nurses to go down to Fort Dix, to the USO, and dance with the fellows.
Oh, in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, yes. I went from Bridgeport, Pennsylvania, and I don't have any recollection as to who spearheaded that, but they would ask some young girls to go down, and we would go down and dance with them for the evening. But that's about all.
Did you date while Dad was overseas?
Now, what kind of questions is that?
All right.
No,
you
I
can take
did.
the fifth on that one if you want to.
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, and he still wasn't coming home, I was getting so... I didn't know what was going on because you were supposed to go over for 18 months, and that's it. At the end of 18 months duty, you were supposed to come home on leave, and he wasn't coming home on leave, and I thought, maybe he doesn't want to come home on leave, or whatever.
Did you correspond while he was in England?
Oh, yes,
France?
constantly. Oh, yes. Letters back and forth.
You still have those letters?
And I was engaged. I have those letters up in the whole closet in a box. So they're yours to read whenever you want. And so I did date for about a month or two. But platonic, because I told them that you realize I am engaged to be married and I'm expecting my fiancé to come home. It's not a fiancé, it's fiancé, is it? Well, my boyfriend. To come home at any time. And they said, sure, fine. So I had a good time.
Now, Mom, let me ask you this question. What was VE Day like? Victory in Europe? Do you recall that day?
No, it's funny. I don't recall that day. I recall when the Japanese were bombed.
Oh, you recall it dropping of the bomb on Nagasaki or
right,
Hiroshima?
and then the war was over. That's when the war was over, isn't that correct?
Yeah, because VE Day was first and then VJ Day came later.
Right. Of course, yes, when they had, what did you call that first one?
VE Day, Victory in Europe, and then VJ Day?
No, see, I don't remember so much.
Victory in Japan?
But no, I remember the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed, and what a feeling that was that the war was going to be over.
Yeah, you mean the bombing of Nagasaki or Hiroshima? Pearl Harbor was...
Isn't that in Japan? Did I say...
You said Pearl Harbor.
No, I meant to say Japan.
Yeah.
And the fact that the war was over, it was just unbelievable. What a feeling that was to think that there would be no more killings, no more bombings of Europe or anywhere. It was wonderful.
What was the mood in Bridgeport in the days and months following the war?
Oh, elation. Everybody was waiting for the men to come home from the war. Everyone was very, very happy. And of course you'd hear of a different neighbor that was coming home. One or two. One of my classmates didn't make it. I forget his name. And one of the neighbors...
Hey, Dad, don't go away. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us what it was like returning home from Europe?
Oh, it was
What was it, 45 or 46? 45, I guess.
45, yeah.
What was it?
It
What did it feel like?
was a very unusual feeling, you know. I'd been overseas, overseas 3 years, over 3 years. And I felt like I was never coming back. I was one place in England for 18 months. It felt like home, you know.
Tidworth?
No. Yeah, Tidworth. Yeah. Anyway, it was quite an experience to come back.
Did you feel like a hero when you came back? Did all the men
Not really. No, not really. Because I wasn't involved in fighting, you know. We were in supply, you know, service troops.
But you
We
were
didn't
being
fire at
bombed.
anybody, you know.
You were being bombed.
Well, we were near bombings, yeah, but we really weren't exposed to much danger, except during the Battle of the Bulge. Anything could have happened. Yeah. But it didn't, fortunately, so
So you came home and you got married.
came home and got married.
Well, Well, why don't you tell us about that first, where'd you go? Why don't you tell us about your wedding?
My wedding? Yeah.
March 2nd, 1946?
That's right. We had a church wedding at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Bridgeport. The parish, it was always our parish, our family parish. And, let's see, we had a home wedding because Dad, your father had saved up $2,800 while he was overseas, making $21 a month. He saved $2,800. And so we had a choice. We either had, at that time, $2,800 was a good amount of money. And we could have had a nice big wedding, you know, big hall and the music and the food and the dancing, but we decided that we would save that money and put it on the down payment for housing instead. And so we had a nice church wedding. I had, as you can see up here,
Mm-hmm.
there we are.
Is that, where was that photograph taken?
The Wanamaker's in Philadelphia, Back Rack Studios. It was supposed to be a real nice studio. So after the wedding, believe it or not, we went from Bridgeport to Philadelphia to have the studio pictures made. And so we had a very nice wedding, and we just had everybody come in our home afterwards, and my mother had made sandwiches. And
In Bridgeport?
in Bridgeport, yes.
How many people attended the wedding?
In the church was pretty full because I had been a school nurse for 3 years, and so I knew a lot of the children, a lot of the family. I knew everybody in Bridgeport. You lived there all your life, and everybody knew everybody else. It's not like today, where you don't know your neighbor down the street. You knew the neighbor, all the neighbors, you know, all the people that lived there. So yeah, the church was full. And of course, the home was full. People, anyone who wanted to come to the house.
Okay, so where did you first live? Oh, by the way, where'd you go on your honeymoon? I didn't ask you that question.
We went to Washington, D.C. for 2 nights.
I thought it was New York.
No, Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't want to spend a lot of money on a honeymoon either. We lived in an apartment, 947 North 8th Street. We had an apartment there for a year.
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, 947 North 8th. And then we bought a home at 7145 Guy Road, a row home, which we loved so much. We had been married a year when we moved in there, and we were expecting Eileen at any time.
That's right, she was born just about a year and a half after you were married.
Right. And we fixed it up real cozy and loved it. 3-bedroom house, nice little backyard, full basement, living room, dining room, tiny kitchen, but we loved it. And we were there for 9 years.
Well, why don't you tell me what it was like when your first child was born? What was that experience like?
Oh, how can you explain that, to have that precious little Eileen who gets more precious every day?
Well, she's not going to be seeing this tape, so you don't have to do that.
She's such a special person. She really is. I just love her so much.
Now tell us about when she was a brat.
She'll tell you about that. Let her tell you. No, she was a very nice young lady growing up.
Was she a good baby?
Oh yes, precious. Well, the first baby, that's all you have to do. Why wouldn't a baby be precious? You can spend all your time with them. And then 2 years and 4 months later, you came along. A precious fat baby. Really fat. And it was exciting. It was so exciting. With each baby, it's just that much more exciting because you bring this new life into your home, and not only you two enjoy it, but the siblings enjoy it. And David came along 6 years later, and he was a talent from day one, and always ready to sing or dance.
Now, was he born before your mother when your mother was still alive?
No, he died. My mother died right before he was born.
She was only about 62, wasn't she?
Right. And she had complications. They used to call it heart trouble, but that's so long ago. They didn't tell you definite diagnoses the way they do today. And then we moved to 154 Clement Drive.
But before we get that far, I want to ask you a question. How, when you were living on Guyer Avenue, how frequently did you and Dad take me and Eileen over to Bridgeport?
Well, you know that, right?
Not really.
Well, several times a month. We didn't have a car until we were married 3 years. And, excuse me, can you cut that off? Where were we?
You're back talking about your trips to Bridgeport. You didn't have a car for the first 3 months.
For the first 3
First
years.
3 years.
Right? First 3 years, we didn't have a car. Couldn't afford a car. And then when we were married 3 years, we got a car, and then we were able to go to Bridgeport probably about 3 Sundays a month. And you remember those, don't you?
I remember them very clearly.
Remember
your mother's pasta?
Right. She used to make homemade pasta. She had a big kitchen at 62 East 4th Street, Bridgeport.
I can recall your father's shoe shop, watching him make shoes.
Yeah, I used to love to do that. That's what I wanted to be, was a shoemaker. And of course, they would laugh at me. I'd say, what's wrong with that? Because I would stand and watch him fix the shoes, you know, and he was so methodic, and he had all the equipment there. They would laugh at me. So I didn't become a shoemaker. I said, gee, there's probably, I don't think there, even to this day, there's a female shoemaker. And why not? It's a simple thing to do.
Well, you had a higher calling.
That's true. Yep. And I became a nurse and loved every minute of it.
When did you stop working full time?
When I was 3 months pregnant with Eileen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would try it now and then, but it just interfered too much with the care of the children. And both your father and I agreed that the most important thing was were the children. I would try some little things now and then, but it just took us away from the children, and that was not good as far as we were concerned.
Now, you say you liked the house on Guyer Avenue?
We did. It was a cozy house. Aunt Rose, my sister, Aunt Rose, loved it. She'd always say, Mary, I like the house on Guyer Avenue better. It was so cozy. But it was small, you know, and it was a row house, and we wanted to get out into a place where we would have ground all around the house, and you know how excited you were about that.
Well, let me ask you about your living arrangements on Guyer Avenue. Did you have people staying there with you for a while?
Well, yes. When we moved into our home on Guyer Avenue, we asked Joe, Dad's brother Joe, and his mother to come and live with us, because they had never really lived in a home. They always had apartments. So I think, although Nana stayed with Betty, continued to live with Betty, she would come out on weekends. But Joe lived with us until you were about 8 months old. He got married when you were 8 months old. So he lived with us from day one. He had his own room, and we loved having him. But then, of course, when he married Aunt Isabel, they had a place of their own then.
Well, how long did Nana live with you?
Just off and on. She really lived with Aunt Betty all the time, but occasionally she would come out for vacations, and on weekends she would come out. But no, Nana really never lived with us. But then Aunt Kate and Aunt Diddy, who were Nana's two sisters, lived behind us. And when Aunt Kate died, Aunt Diddy, Aunt Elizabeth really was her name, came to live with us. And she was with us, I don't know, can you remember times and dates?
No.
She was probably with us about 3 or 4 years. She had her room upstairs. And then Dad went into when the Korean War broke out. Isn't that precious? Look at that.
You keep stepping on your lines, you know? You keep stealing your scenes.
I know. I'm doing. What you doing? How about
Okay.
I try to hold it?
All right.
Come on, sweetheart.
Get into the action here.
Come on, joy complete. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, you want to grab my glasses? I don't think he's going to sit still. You'd rather be on the floor, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he wants to
Hey,
crawl.
listen, you. What are you doing? Hey. Look around. Oh, you're not getting my glasses again. You're...
Or your pearls now.
Oh, the pearls.
You better put him on the floor before he rips those things off.
Come on, Joey.
Okay, so you were telling us about
Here comes Grandpa. Here comes Grandpa in the back door. There he is. He's waiting for you, Grandpa.
Got him.
What? What? Oh, no. He wants to grab these,
No,
I know.
dance, you gonna dance.
He's losing a sock.
You gonna dance, man? You gonna dance? I'm gonna fix your sock.
Okay, you were telling us, Mom, about Aunt Diddy coming to live with you for a while.
Yes, she lived with us for about 3 years, and then Dad was called back into active service
In Korea.
in Korea. Fortunately, he didn't have to go over. He was in for a year, and then he was released. But during that time, I thought I was going to go and live at the camp, near the camp where Dad was. And so we got an apartment for Aunt Diddy in South Philly, so that's where she stayed until she died. So she was only really with us for several years. But
Okay, we're back on.
okay. Now, when the Korean conflict broke out, Dad was called into the service, and he was stationed somewhere down in Jacksonville, Tennessee. It was Breckenridge, Kentucky, where I was playing.
Well, you know what? You better change to that side because the light's behind you. The sunlight's behind you.
Somebody's behind me.
Yeah, there you
this,
go.
To this
Yeah.
chair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's better.
And we had planned, you were a few months old, and Eileen was around 2.5 years old. And we had planned to go out to live near the camp. But then he was discharged after a year on hardship, I think they called it, because he had 2 children.
That's pretty much a hardship, huh?
Oh, you better believe it. And so then what else do you want to know?
All right, well, I want to know more about,
Then we sold that house. We paid it off in 9 years.
well, Dave was born at one point. Don't forget to mention Dave.
I did.
Oh, okay. He'll feel slighted if you don't mention him.
Precious David. Sure, I remember what I said about him. He was always ready to go into a song and dance from the day he was born.
Okay.
Natural talent.
Now, you would go back and work part-time during the 1950s or not?
No, not after I got married.
Okay.
No, I would try different things, but as I said, it didn't work out for us. We felt that I should stay at home all the time, and I felt that way. We both felt
Okay.
same about that.
Now, who was it that had the idea to move?
Me, absolutely me alone. I wanted a single home, round around it, and I talked your father into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had paid off the other home, and I said we could have a good down payment for this home that we're living in now. He objected, but his objection was overruled. And the rest is history. We moved out here, and then the twins were born out here.
What was your feeling about moving to South Jersey?
Well,
Why did you want to do it?
Well, I wanted to move into a single home, and a home with ground around it, and we couldn't afford anything out where I wanted to move to, King of Prussia, near Bridgeport, where my sisters were and my brother. But we couldn't afford it. It was a little more expensive there. So I settled for here, and I was homesick for a long, long time. And I will always say it's a good thing I made that decision. Because if your father had made that decision to move here, he would have been in big trouble. But I made the decision. So I was homesick for years and years and years, for about 20 years. Whenever I'd go back to Bridgeport, I would just get that homesick feeling. But now this is home.
You don't feel homesick anymore?
No. Not for about the last 10 years. Could you believe it?
It's about time, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was it like to move to South Jersey?
It was wonderful to move into this beautiful home. We just thought it was so big and so beautiful. And It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. We all had good health, and the 3 children were happy too. What about you? Did you like moving?
It was the greatest experience of my life.
There you go.
There were cornfields, and there were barns and woods and animals, cows, you name it.
That's right.
Chickens,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of places to play.
Yeah.
So when you moved out here, what were you? Did you have any concerns about adjusting to life in the suburbs?
Oh no.
Did you make friends easily?
I do.
Or did you?
I do that. I did, and I do. I like people. I love people. I could talk to anybody at any time. Everybody is interesting.
Well,
Everyone's life is so interesting. I can talk to anybody. Just tell me about their life. It's better than reading a book.
Well, what friends did you make when you moved out here?
Out here, the Kellys, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Kelly, who live across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Brocken, who did live across the street, and the Sorellos, and the Rudios, who lived next door, and Mr. and Mrs. Denicola,
Mm-hmm.
and the family, and that's about it. They're the very closest ones we have around here.
And were you able to develop a social circle then at that time?
Well, I was always so busy with the family. Yes, that was the social circle, and church was very important part of my life.
Well, now you've got to talk about the day the earth stood still when the twins were born.
Oh yes, 2 children, 2 beautiful boys. And the nun said to me after they were born, she said, well, how do you feel about that, Mary, twins? I said, 1 child is a miracle. I don't know what to call 2. And then I went off into la la land. But I remember saying that, feeling that at the time.
That was 1961, I believe.
Right.
Isn't it?
2
The hospital was
boys.
a lady.
And I like the name Paul, and Dad liked the name Tom. That's how they were named.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell us about raising twins?
It was hair raising. At the age of 40, by the way, I had them at the age of 40. I'm glad that's down for posterity. And it was very difficult. Very, very difficult. But they're worth it all. Every minute of difficulty.
Now,
they're worth it. They're so beautiful.
Did you have much help from your older children?
You especially, Bill.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes, because you were in 8th grade. See, Eileen was in high school, and she was a little more involved in school. And but when she came home, and your father was such a help. He would come home, and I'd have dinner for him at 6 o'clock. And then I'd go to bed around 7, and sleep until 11 o'clock. When it was time for him to go to bed, because 1 twin was always awake. And so that was really why I was able to get through it. I was able to get those hours sleep because I didn't sleep all night. 11 o'clock, I was up with one or the other for 4 years. Let that go down in history for 4 years.
So it's been recorded.
Yep.
Now, can you tell us when your father died?
He died.
Were you living here, or?
Yes, I was living here because he attended the twins' christening. We have some pictures of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 8 years after that he died. Yes, he died of a stroke, cardiovascular, I imagine, at the age of 84. He was very lively, and he was very outgoing. I think I'm a lot like him, very outgoing, and enjoyed life.
What year was he born, do you know?
I really don't know.
Was it before the turn of the century?
I don't know. I really don't know. They didn't talk so much about themselves. The ones that came over from Italy and from a new foreign country, they just kind of kept quiet about it. And of course we got busy in our lives, and You just never knew, and I'm just so sorry that I didn't ask my mother more questions and my father more questions.
Like I'm asking you.
Yes, I'm so sorry I didn't do that. I was so busy that I just didn't ask her. I just loved my mother so dearly.
Well, she visited you on Gar Avenue quite a bit, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Not quite a bit, because she had to travel. It used to take almost an hour by, connections, public connections. And she'd come and stay for a week or a few days. It was just great having her. Do you remember that when she stayed with us?
Very, very vaguely. I do remember seeing her and you in the living room on Gar Avenue together.
Is that right? Oh, yeah, we were very close, just as close as Eileen and I are. I guess that kind of perpetuates itself.
Okay. When we last were talking, Mom,
Uh-huh.
you were talking about your relationship with your mother and your daughter and how it perpetuates itself.
Yes.
And because we were talking about the fact that you and Eileen had enjoyed each other's company when she was living at home. And then in about 1964 or so, 65, Eileen, well, she was still living at home, but she was preoccupied with college. And what were things like in those days when the twins were about 5 or 6 years old? Now,
Well, they were younger than that,
preoccupied.
weren't they? When she was in college, they were about 3 or 4.
They were about 4 or 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They used to want to come downstairs,
Uh-huh.
and she'd be in her room doing her homework and try to keep them from coming down.
Right?
And they tell me that they used to get past her sometime, depending on which boards would creak, make a noise. And they would get past her and they would sit on that chair that you're sitting on there and watch us the whole evening. we didn't know they were up there.
Right.
They'd be watching television with us and we didn't know it. But there were wonderful times when you were all alone and you were such a big help with them. Oh my. I don't know what I would have done without you.
Well, how did you enjoy living in Summerdale in those days?
I liked it very much. I just liked having a bigger home than what we had in Philadelphia. And the neighborhood is very nice. We all had nice friends.
You still have those friends today, correct?
Well, yes, I mentioned about my friends, but now I'm talking about you all had nice friends.
Mm-hmm.
That would come and play with you and all that jazz. Getting lost down the woods and worrying about that.
Did you worry about us being involved in the woods around here and that kind of thing?
Not as much as I should have, I think. Later on I heard some hairy stories, but we'd keep a pretty close watch on you between Mrs. Denicola and I, Josie and I, and the Bradleys. We kept a pretty close watch on what you were doing down in the woods. And it was so nice when you all went back to school in September. Everything was nice and quiet.
Well, that's good. Now, when I left for college, it was about 1967, and the twins were about 6 years old at that time. Were you able to cope with them?
Oh, sure. Once they're in school and you don't see them for so many hours, it's easier to deal with them. And they got along fine in school. You all did well in school. You all did well. It didn't cause any problems going to school. I remember saying once to Eileen, this business of when you had to meet the teachers. I said, you got to see, and they tell everybody the same thing. Your children are fine, and they're no trouble, they're doing well. And Eileen, who had been a teacher for a year, she said, are you kidding, Mom? She said, I can't wait to see some of those teachers, some of those mothers, because the children, are not behaving themselves. So that gave me a sort of an insight that you all did well. I thought everybody got the same report from the teachers. A little naive, I guess.
Well, were you upset by the fact that I had been picked up by the local police for trespassing on the nearby farm here?
Oh, that wasn't the local police that picked you up. That was Mr. Dobbs.
And the local police as well.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
They came too?
They came too.
Yeah, so, said take him to jail, go ahead. And the local police, I thought it was the sheriff.
Oh, wait a minute, the sheriff,
It
yeah.
was the sheriff. He said to me, "Oh, don't be so hard on him." He said, "Mr. Dobbs does that all the time. He's always reporting kids."
Oh, is that what
I
he
said, "Oh,
said?
you can take him to jail if you want to." You were what, about 8?
No, I was about 14 at the time.
Oh, were you that old?
13 or 14, yeah.
I said, "Well, you have to learn." And they said, "Well, it's just a farm." I said, "If it doesn't belong to you, then it belongs to somebody else. Just keep off the property." I said, "Just remember that about anything. Anything that doesn't belong to you belongs to someone else. Keep your hands off
Mm-hmm.
and respect people's property."
So you were going to send me down the river, essentially.
I certainly was.
Well, the juvenile officer came to the home too and interviewed you, I think, didn't he?
I think that was the one that I said to him, "Oh, go ahead, take him to jail. He deserves to go to jail if he's walking with somebody's bothering someone."
Thanks a lot, by the way.
And
Yeah.
look at what a fine man you are today. I'm so proud of you.
Are you proud of all of your children?
You know, you're a wonderful father to them. Garrett, who's downstairs with Grandpa right now. And Anne, your wonderful wife, Anne.
How about the rest of your children?
My children, your siblings, you mean? I love that word,
Yes,
your siblings.
my siblings. Have they turned out as you expected them
Oh,
to?
sure, absolutely.
No complaints?
No complaints.
Even though 2 of them are salesmen? Doesn't bother you?
No, they do so well. You're all doing better than we ever did. Which is something great.
Now, you worked at Wills Eye Hospital while you were living here in Somerdale, and how long did that go on?
15 years part-time. Not even regular part-time. I would just, they would put me on the schedule, but if they weren't busy, I wouldn't go in. But if they were busy, I'd go in a little more. I'd never let them put me down regular part-time, because then that meant that, I was tied down. While you were all home, I just wanted to be free, to be able to go to graduations and vacations and birthday parties and all that. Yeah, I wanted to be free.
Well,
So I worked from the time I was 50 until I was 65.
Oh, so you retired at 65.
I think it was 64 or 65,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay. Now, in 1967, I left for Washington, D.C. in Catholic U. Do you recall that
Oh,
event?
yes. Oh, how proud. How proud we were. She won a scholarship to Catholic University, Washington, D.C.
Do you recall driving down there with me that first day?
Not really, no. I can't say the first day, but it's all the trips that we took down there were just kind of blend together. We would take the twins down, and they used to love coming down and going down to see you. And you said that you would look for them, up at the window, and you'd see these 2 little ones come running up. One would come up one stairway, one, right?
Right. Running up, both dressed in red boxer shorts and white T-shirts.
They were wonderful days. I mean, we were just so proud of you. And especially when I walked in, well, first of all, I was so proud when you graduated Camden Catholic. And we're sitting there, and 500 students went by, and you were the top honors boy. I know there were 3 girls ahead of you, but you were the boy with the highest average. And I was so overwhelmed. I said, "There's 500 students." I didn't have any idea that you did that well in school. And that was one of my moments that I remember very clearly.
What about your daughter? She did pretty well in school.
She did too, yes.
In fact, your son Dave became president of the student government. How did that impress you?
Oh my gosh, I was always so impressed with these kids. I just loved them all, and especially when they got into the dramatics. David with his dramatics. Oh, I lived through him. About dramatics, because that's what I wanted to do. And then the twins, when they went to school, I said to them, "Join the dramatic club. I mean, that's where you have a lot of fun." And they did. I think in their sophomore year they did. And they became quite active.
Now they became president. Paul and Tom became president and vice president of their class, respectively.
I forgot about
Did that impress you?
Oh, heavens, yes. Oh, yes. There goes Michael. He went up and took his shower. And he's on his way with you and Anne and Brendan to go over to Tom and Jean's and Garrett's, and Paul and Tina are going to be there, and you're going to get Chinese food. Wouldn't that be great? Isn't that going to be great?
Michael's living here these days?
Yes, he is. He's going to finish his year at Sterling. He's going to put in half a year at Sterling, and then when Eileen comes east, when school is over, to violin.
She's due here in June, right?
She's due here in June. Then Mike will go down with his family.
Okay, now about 1970, we're getting close to the time when Eileen got married. I think she got married in 1970 or 71, didn't she?
Oh, I forget.
I think it was 1970.
How old is Greg?
Greg's 20.
20. And they were married a couple of years when he was born, I think.
Just about,
Like that.
yeah. So I think she was married in 70, in June of 70. So what was what's your recollection of that event?
Oh, that was wonderful. We had a real nice wedding at Silver Lake Inn,
Mm-hmm.
Our Lady of Grace Church, and it was a wonderful wedding.
What were your initial impressions of her groom, Joseph?
Of her present, her present
I mean,
her husband.
Her husband.
Oh, he was a very nice guy, very intelligent, very ambitious.
Was that your most remarkable impression? His intelligence
Oh,
and
sure.
ambition?
That impresses me more than anything, intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, what were your feelings on the day of Eileen's wedding? Do you recall that?
I was so happy for her. I don't know why these people go around crying. I'm always so happy at weddings because it's such a happy occasion.
Yeah.
All the weddings, your wedding, and
You didn't cry at anybody's wedding?
I don't think so. I was just so happy for them. And Paul and Tina had such a beautiful wedding, and you and Ann, and Tom and Jean. You all were so lucky to get such wonderful wives.
I'll say that's true.
That
Can't
is true.
dispute that one. Well, in 1970 then she was married, and how did you enjoy having her live so close by in Stratford?
For a year, well, that was about a year I think they lived there.
Yeah.
That was heaven. From then on, it was downhill. She went to Florida, and she went to California, and I can speak about it lightly now because after 20 years, she's coming home. She's going to be living in Vineland. It's just unbelievable.
Well, how did you feel when she left for Florida?
Terrible.
It was about 1972. I
And
think.
worse, when I remember the day that she heard that it was definite they were going to move to California. And to this day, and I tell this to Eileen, and she said, "This is a little bit odd, isn't it, Mom?" I say to her, "I can't believe that you actually went out to live in California. I still can't believe it." I mean, I don't know how to decipher that, but that's how I feel. 20 years. She's been away from home that long. And she's going to be coming home.
So when she left, you were hoping it would be only temporary.
Oh, sure. I was sure it was going to be temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely sure.
Okay, so 1971 came along, and Gregory, your first grandchild, was born.
Oh, precious, beautiful Gregory.
71 or 72, and what was your impression of having a grandchild, being a grandparent?
Wonderful. And now we have 11. David has 4, and Eileen has 5. David has Chris and Katie and Nikki and Polly, and Eileen has Greg and Michael and David and Billy and Laura Ann. Little Laura Ann.
Now, your sister
And of
Rose...
course, Tom Jean have Brendan, and you have Garrett.
And I have Garrett. Now, didn't your sister Rose die in this time frame sometime?
Oh yeah, she was always sickly, and she died in a nursing home. She had a devastating stroke while she was in the nursing home. She had a partial one, and then while she was in the nursing home, she had a devastating stroke so that she was bedridden, and then that was it for about 3 years, and then she died. And my sister Pauline also died. Rose had diabetes very badly.
Well, now, she was your first sibling to have died that you knew well. Obviously, you had younger siblings who had died in infancy.
Oh, I don't remember any of them.
Right.
No.
But you do remember, of course, Aunt Rose's death, and how did that impact on you when your first sibling died?
How can you describe that? How can you describe that? You can't. You never get over that. And then Joe was the second one to die, my brother Joe, at the age of 52. He just walked over the bridge and went to visit a friend, walked from Bridgeport to Norristown to visit a friend and sat down and said, I'm so tired, and dropped dead. And about 2 years after that, Pauline had to be put in a nursing home because she couldn't. How you doing there, Garrett? What you doing? What that big boy doing?
What's he doing?
Look at his little nose.
Hey,
Hi, little feller.
What are you doing down there? What are you doing down there behind the bars? Hmm? You watching what's going on? Grandpapa's taking care of you? That's good. Well, don't talk too loudly now. We're in the middle of a filming session here.
He's
Okay.
not interested in the cabinets down there, opening the cabinets
I
and
took
getting...
down twice.
Oh, really? He's not
Yeah.
interested.
Too interested down there.
Okay, well, as we head into the 1970s,
Right.
you got more and more active in charitable organizations, didn't you?
Well, the St. Vincent de Paul Society. I felt honored. I feel honored being part of that. It's part of my life. It'll always be part of my life. It's an organization. Mostly we used to handle clothes and food at Our Lady of Grace, but we couldn't handle clothes anymore because we didn't have a place for them, and the fire marshal got after us. So we just handled mainly food and food certificates, and we try to direct people if we can. But it's a wonderful organization. It's a worldwide organization to help those in need. And I'm also a lady of charity,
Okay.
which was founded by St. Vincent de Paul. But I don't do too much of that anymore. I'm just a member, and I go to the luncheons, all those nice things.
And all these years, by the way, you've always kept in touch with the De Simone brothers, right, from your childhood?
Oh, yes, the bishop. The bishop and Father Salvatore, Father Sally, who died a little over a year ago, the youngest of the three. And we grew up together. And Father Russell, Uncle Charlie's home right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that he's home from Africa, where he has spent 30 years, but he's going, this is March, and he's going back to Africa in May. But he told me that Father Russell is going to be home again soon. He goes back and forth from Italy, from Rome to Philadelphia. So he'll be home soon. He's going to be bringing him over sometime. So I'll be glad to see him.
Oh, bringing him over here.
Yeah, just for dinner or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well now as we head into the late 1970s, your last, actually, I think it is in the late 1970s when your youngest children go off to college and leave the home.
Right.
Make it an empty nest. I think that was 79 or so?
Probably.
78, 79?
Dates.
When your youngest, Tom Paul, left for college.
Went to Duquesne, and they did so well at Duquesne. We never bugged them about what they were doing or what classes they were taking, or they'd call and say this happened or that happened, and or they got the report cards, and I'd say, well, is that the best you could do? They said, oh, yeah, it's hard or whatever. I said, well, fine.
Well, how did it feel to have an empty nest
It felt kind of
that
great.
time? Oh, it did?
Sure, I loved it. Sure. And I was happy that they were happy in what they were doing. I liked coming down in the morning, and the kitchen was still just the way I left it. It didn't have a lot of pots and pans and dirty dishes.
Mm-hmm.
That was nice. Having to wash less. And knowing that they were happy too, and they were doing so well. They had such a good time at Duquesne. As did David.
Did you, at this time, have more time on your hands to see your old friends and your relatives more
Oh,
often?
sure, absolutely. One more time. Okay, Michael, I see you making a face.
Hey, who's making a face? That's your grandson?
My grandson, Michael.
My godson.
Your godson. And you're all going, I did say that you're all going to go over to Tom's house.
And you've also managed to keep in touch with your nursing school friends over the years.
Right.
Very,
Snyder's
very
and
close
Shapes.
touch.
Snyder's, Shapes, and Cherries.
Mm-hmm.
and we still go out to dinner now since Cherry's moved here from Atlanta after 40 years. She was homesick, always homesick, Claire. And they finally moved up here a couple of years ago, so now it's it's 4 couples. We go out to dinner about every 3 months, here, there, and everywhere.
Okay. Well, in 1985, Dad retired.
Right, and I retired also.
About the same time?
Same time. Then Eileen and Joe gave us each a ticket. It was good for a year on Eastern Airlines. And boy, did we go traveling.
Now you went to Europe for the first time, didn't you? At that time, or at least?
Well, not with that ticket. No, not with that ticket. That was just for anywhere in the continental United States, which we did up pretty well. No, we went to. Yes, I had gone to Rome with Uncle Charlie. He met me there in Rome, 10 days, which were fantastic. And then Dad and I went to Europe. Right after that, together, we went to, I think, I don't know how many countries.
18 days.
How many?
18 days?
18 days, yes. And I don't know how many countries we went to. Venice was one of them.
So you got to see most of Europe.
Most of Europe, yeah.
Was it a lifelong dream?
Well, I know. I can't say it was a dream because I never expected to do it. No, I can't say it was a lifelong dream. I never expected to go to Europe. Never.
Okay, now this is October. It's been several months since we last had an installment of this documentary, and since March, and now, since then, you've had certain things done to the house. Why don't you tell us about them?
Well, the most important thing is the new door. Replaced our 30-year-old door. Eileen and I picked it out. Isn't it beautiful? It has that leaded glass in the center of the door and along the side, and then we had the open windows glass across the top, and I just love it.
And you can see the beautiful fall colors out there, right?
Yes, and I'll be able to see when it snows. And it's just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. I wish I had done it years ago.
Better late than never, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, when
Now
we
what
last talked, you had been describing your trip to Europe and the fact that you enjoyed spending 18 days in Europe. But how else did you enjoy your retirement after you and Dad retired in 1985?
Well, I was able to do all the things that I always wanted to do, like spend more time with the St. Vincent de Paul Society, the Ladies of Charity. I got quite involved there until I got sick, and I decided to put the skids to all of that, and spend more time with my friends, and just take it easy.
Why don't you tell us?
Which is not what I did.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Okay. What did you do?
I just got real active in life. I just started running, I think, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
Well, why don't you tell us about the kinds of people you enjoy spending time with now?
Well, my dearest friends.
And who are
My
they?
dearest friends, and of course, besides the ones, my classmates that I mentioned, then there are the friendships that I made here with the Kellys, and with let me see, Rita Brocken is a very dear friend now. We go out together with them to dinner. We visit each other. We watched each other's families grow. And I can't, there are others, but I should have thought about this before.
Others in the neighborhood here?
Pardon?
Others in the neighborhood that grew up that lived in the neighborhood?
Yes, and of course the Rudios, who moved, and I never forgave her for moving. I tell her that every time I see her. And they didn't move too far, but once you move out of the neighborhood, you don't get to see them too often. We've been to their weddings, they've been to our weddings and our 70th birthdays and so forth. So it's a good friendship.
Josie Lantieri?
Oh, Josie. Oh, Josie. Yeah, Josie. We're very close. I don't ever see her because she never stops moving. She's like a moving target. When people ask me about her, I say to her, she's a moving target. You can't get a hold of her. But now and then we manage to get together and have a good time.
Terry Cirillo?
Oh, and Terry Sorello, yes. We get together too, whenever we can.
How about your friends through the Ladies of Charity or the St. Vincent de Paul Society?
Oh, sure, they're wonderful people. They're wonderful people. That's why I enjoy going to the quarterly meetings. I admire those men so much that give so much of their lives for other people. They just quietly do those things when they come home from work, on weekends, always thinking about helping other people. They're just, I just can't describe it.
Who are they? Name some names.
The Muscolis, the Barretts, now the new president, Lou Amorosi, and his wife. You really, it all fits in. The Lord does all that. He let those people come into our lives, into the organization. They were just directed there. When you sit back and you think of those things, you just know that it was the Lord that did it all. Really. The way I got pushed, cornered into becoming president. Now that it's all over, 4 years later, I realize that that's what God wanted me to do. Put me in the right place, so to speak, at the right time, and that was it. And I'm glad that I did it now. I'm glad I didn't...
Punt?
Didn't what?
Punt? It's a football term. It means you give the ball up.
You pumped, I'm glad. Yeah, that's it. I'm glad I didn't pump.
Okay. Now, what about the presidency of the St. Vincent de Paul Society? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
How long did you hold that post?
4 years. A year more than... we just couldn't... no one came along, let's put it that way. I used to say we can't get anybody to do it. But no one came along, and the Lord directed Lou Amorosi, and he's such a good president. So we're all there to help him. And
so you got it by default the first time? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I kind of... There was the one president, it was the end of his term, and they couldn't find anybody that would take it, and they kept asking me, and I kept saying, I didn't want that responsibility. I just didn't like the idea, really, down deep. I did not like the idea of handling money that was donated. I always had an awful fear that something was going to happen adversely, and I always had that in mind. But no, nothing ever happened.
You haven't gotten sued yet, right?
I haven't. No, I just thought people would question, but there's no such thing. And I just did the best I could. That's it.
Well, now,
best I could.
Since we last talked in March, also your daughter moved back east.
Oh. And we just went to the Ladies of Charity National Convention at the Wyndham Hotel in Philadelphia, and it was the first time that we were together, just the two of us, without the children or husbands around, and we talked into the night. I'll never forget when I went over earlier. I went early on Friday, and she wasn't able to come until the kids came home from school. And I waited in the vestibule for her. When I saw her come in, I just ran over to her. She just looked so beautiful, and ran over to her and hugged her. And then we went up into the room, and then we went over to the cathedral where both Tom and Paul were married. That was across the street from the Wyndham Hotel.
This is just a month ago or so, wasn't it?
Cathedral of St. Peter Paul. This was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. And so we sat in the first pew, exactly where I had sat when Tom and Paul, when they were married. And boy, I'll tell you, the memories were floating through my mind. I didn't want to sit there. And I said, why not? I said, I asked the other lady of charity from New Jersey if it was okay to sit in the front. And she said she had asked somebody and it was okay. And I kept on saying, Mom, I don't want to sit here. But suppose they come and ask us to move. I said, so what? So we'll move. So we sat there the whole time. And she was a little reluctant, but it was heavenly. It was heavenly to be in the front seat. That cathedral, there must have been a couple thousand people there because it was combined with the Catholic Charities and from the national organizations. So we met a lot of wonderful people there.
So how often, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How often do you get to see Eileen and her family now that she's back on the East Coast?
As often as possible. As often as is humanly possible. We don't have it down to a schedule yet, but we've been seeing each other about twice a week. Twice a week, imagine that.
A lot to make up for, I guess.
And
Right?
to see, that's one, to see her walking up to the door, and sitting in the kitchen, and talking and talking and talking until it's time for her to go home. And going shopping, I can't believe it.
How about your grandchildren? Get to see them much?
When Eileen was away, I can't explain it. There were times when I didn't know what it was like to have a daughter. But thank God she's here. She's here.
Now, what about your grandchildren? Eileen's children?
Aren't they all wonderful? First of all, I had 5 wonderful children. How else can you describe them? And then to have all these grandchildren that are just so beautiful and intelligent. We've got to get David home too, so that we can watch those children grow. Look at Garrett. That's if Michelangelo were living today, and he would pick Garrett as a model for his children, for his beautiful cherubs.
Are you saying he's angelic?
He's angelic.
Okay.
That's it.
How about those Coldonado kids?
Wow. They're so intelligent. I can't keep up with them. And, all the 4 boys. And then Laura Ann, that little doll. And she's so expressive, And then I went there, and then she's all... I wonder where she gets all that expressiveness. Is that a word?
I think so.
Oh, see, I was always surrounded by all these intelligent people, and correcting me when I said something incorrectly, and I appreciate that because I think it has helped me my grammar and English,
Well, that's been a good...
for which very positive.
Positive impact, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what about the next 20 years? What do you hope to accomplish? What do you hope to do?
First of all, Dad
Hey,
always...
Dad, don't go away. You have to come back into this thing for a minute.
Dad always asks me the night before.
Why don't you sit down on the couch over there? Because Mom's going to talk about you for a second, okay?
When Dad will say to me before we go to bed at night, he'll say, "Well, what are you going to do tomorrow?" And I have a pat answer. I said, "The first thing I'm going to do is get up." Then afterwards, things just start rolling, don't they? Isn't it amazing?
Keep them rolling. That's our motto. Keep them rolling.
Oh, it's amazing how things just keep happening every day.
Every day is
Every
Ladies'
day.
Day with me.
Every day is Ladies' Day?
Well,
Doesn't sound good.
Go ahead.
is that it?
I'll sit there for a while.
I mean, is that what you want me to say?
No, you can stay here for a while.
What will I say?
Mom's going to talk about the next 20 years, and you have to comment on it. What do you hope to accomplish and do
If
next?
we can just stay the way we are for the next 20 years, wouldn't that be wonderful? But that's not possible. It's not possible. We just take one day at a time and enjoy each day and are happy for it.
And Dad, what do you see as happening in the next 20 years? What do you hope to do or accomplish in the next several years?
Yeah, I don't know what the future holds. I'll take what comes.
One day at a time?
One day at a time. I'll take what comes. Yeah.
What gives you pleasure now?
Wow, what a question. Oh, all my friends.
His legions. He has legions
My
of
friends are legion.
Your friends are leaving?
Legion.
Oh, Legion.
Yeah.
Now, do you hear wonderful, beautiful Garrett upstairs? He woke up.
Garrett's awake.
He woke up.
That's
And now you were here last night because
that's symbolic of what'll happen in the next 20 years, I think. Grandchildren,
Mm-hmm. Well,
right?
we're
It
pretty
takes
well
up,
on the road.
starting to take up more and more of our time all the time. And
Is that good or bad?
You didn't let me finish.
Oh.
And it gives us a lot of pleasure.
That's good.
Yeah, really.
All right, Mom, why don't you tell us how you hope to be remembered
Hope to be
by
remembered.
future generations. Dad, I'm going to pass on this question for you. You can skip this one.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you have a
No, I have nothing.
Clever answer.
I have nothing further to say. No,
well, you're not under investigation. I can tell you that right now.
no.
Okay, Mom?
You may quote me. You may quote me as having no comment.
Okay. That's good enough. Mom, how about you?
What was your question? I
Oh,
forget.
how do you hope to be remembered by posterity, by future generations?
Posterity. Just my children. I just hope to be remembered as a good person. That's it. Close to God, that really believed in God.
And if you could have a wish for the world, what would that wish be?
The same thing. Stay close to God. Do you know what my my prayer is always? I only have one prayer
What is that?
for all my family. I pray that they receive the graces to remain close to the heart of God. To me, that sums it all up. You know, of course, and when there's illness, I pray about illness. But everything else, I just pray to the Lord. Give them the necessary graces to remain close to your heart. You have that, you have everything. That's it. That sums it up.
All right. Thank you very much, Mom.
You're quite welcome, sweetheart. I love you all. Thing.
Well, it's not over yet. One more.
Well, come on,
Go give your
sweetheart.
chocolate to Grandma.
Come on,
Give Grandma a
sweetheart.
kiss. She wants a kiss. You go give Grandma a kiss? Hmm? Go give Grandma.
Thank you. Thank you. Were you sleeping? You took a nap in Grandmom's home, didn't you? Isn't that nice in Grandmom's crib? Were you sleeping? Huh? You just got up, didn't you? Huh? And you slept here last night because your mommy and daddy went to Uncle Paul and Aunt Tina's house for a Halloween party, and Aunt Eileen and Uncle Joe were there. That was wonderful. And all their friends, and Uncle Tom and Aunt Jean, and everybody else was at the party, and you were here with Grandma and Grandpa, and you slept at our house overnight, and we just love it. We love this little angel so much.
Can you rattle off your 11 grandchildren as we speak?
Pardon?
Who are your 11 grandchildren?
Sure. I did already. I did already. Don't need to go through that again.
All right. No favorites, though, right?
No, but they're all so unusual, and that's the truth. I mean, you know, that
Unique,
is
you
the
mean.
truth.
You
Pardon?
mean unique, not unusual.
Well, right, unique. That's a better word.
Okay.
Unusually unique. How's that? Oh, look at him smiling. Oh, look. Come on over here. Come on. You don't want to come to Grandma?
See, you've taught them all to be independent, Mom.
Mom, oh, everyone, you know.
They're all independent, just like you.
And your wonderful lives. Wow. Look at Ann. She just ran into the kitchen.
Of course, eating more.
Eating more. And staying just as slim and beautiful as ever. How does she do it? My gosh.
What?
All with her own uniqueness.
Daughters-in-law?
My daughters-in-law. What did I say?
That's right.
Oh, okay.
I missed it.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Garrett, give Grandma a kiss before we shut off here.
No, you don't have to give me a kiss. That's okay. That's okay. What I usually do when he doesn't want to give me a kiss, I just grab a hold of him like this. I just grab a hold of him, and I just go like this. I just grab him, and I say, that's it. Okay, goodbye.